So today I'm going to talk about some of the new recent studies in my lab focusing on thalamic reticular nucleus, their function and its function, and particularly its potential dysfunction in neurodevelopmental disorders. So my lab is very interested in synapse and circuits development, and particularly their dysfunction or defect in neurodevelopment and psychiatric disorders. So most of our work is focused on one particular circuit called corticostriatal thalamocortical circuits for two reasons. One is for many of us who use animal models, we're looking for circuits that are relatively conserved across species. The second is this circuit's dysfunction of this circuit is associated with many of the key symptoms in psychiatric and neurodevelopmental disorders, including repetitive behaviors, cognitive inflexibility, sensory abnormality, and sleep disruptions, just name a few. And also many of the studies have implicated dysfunction of the corticostriatal thalamocortical circuits in ASD, OCD, ADHD, or schizophrenia. So previous work in my lab had been focused on corticostriatal synapses in repetitive behaviors. And more recently, we focus a lot of attention on thalamocortical circuits, on sensory processing, attention, sleep. So this is the part I'm going to talk about. So today I'm going to focus on one particular part of the thalamus called the thalamic reticular nucleus, TRN. You probably all know very well TRN is a group of GABAergic neurons that provide a major source of inhibition to the thalamus. And the main function of TRN is like we call the gatekeepers. Basically, it selects relevant information and suppress the distractive information, distractors. And so during sensory gating, attention, or cognition. And one of the best example people use for the TRN function is if you are in a very big party, we don't have that right now, but it will resume sometime, I hope. And they're very noisy, but you can still focus your attention to your friend who have a very nice conversation. So how do you filter all this noise out? The TRN play a very important role. That's just one of the examples. And TRN also play a very important role in generating of sleep signals. So they play a very important role in regulating sleep. And also importantly, TRN dysfunction have been implicated in many of the psychiatric disorders, including autism and schizophrenia. This type of TRN dysfunction contributing to neurodevelopmental disorder also led us to think about how the TRN, such a uniformed inhibited group of inhibited neurons, how do they control such a diverse function? So we start to think about whether they have, whether all these functions are controlled or mediated by same circuits, are they a cell type or circuits heterogeneity in the TRN? Can we identify TRN specific target or even subnetwork type specific target allows to more precisely modulate the TRN function, and hopefully in the future identify targets to develop treatment for some of the symptoms. So for this type, in my second part, I'm going to talk about how our recent study, we use single cell analysis to identify distinct networks in the TRN. This helps us to think very differently how can we modulate TRN function.
One reason why people have focused on an area of the brain called the thalamus is because the thalamus takes in all of the sensory information, whether it's coming from the ear or the skin or from our nose or from our eyes, and it's the hub that connects other areas of the brain to each other, essentially. And it gives information back to certain areas of the brain, and then it takes information from those areas of the brain. And so sometimes people refer to it as having one of its roles is having a function of gating. And by gating, we mean when and where should we pay attention to something. So if just sitting here crossing our legs starts to go numb. Obviously, that's probably been happening for a little while before you are consciously aware of it and allows you to uncross your legs so you're not having that numbness. We think that the thalamus is part of the reason why we pay attention suddenly to that numbness and tingling. So imagine, if you will, that your attention is on all stimuli as it's coming in without being able to filter it out. Sort of like, you will know better than I, but some microphones. I know that technology is changing to filter out certain noise, but if you look at a microphone, it is just taking in noise constantly. So how do you get it to focus on something, not necessarily because it's closer, but because it's of a certain wavelength? Well, you can use technology to do that, and the thalamus does that. It says, okay, I'm not going to pay attention to a car that's moving, way out of my range, and it's not important for me to know about that car. But I can still see it. I can still see it moving, but I'm not going to look at it or pay attention to that. Imagine if something goes wrong in the network, and you're getting all of these constant visual and non-visual stimuli to your brain, and you start to pay attention to all of them. That is what I imagine personally might be experienced by some people with visual snow, is they're paying attention to stimuli that's happening to you, but is suddenly reaching your consciousness. And suddenly you're constantly feeling and seeing things that your brain would normally gate out and prevent you from either paying attention to it or actually experiencing it consciously.